Well, hello and welcome to episode 16 of Modular Curiosity. This is going to be a special one because something amazing happened this week. You wouldn't believe it. We hit 500 subscribers. That's amazing. Folks, I just have to say thank you so much. I started this just barely over 3 months ago, a few days beyond 3 months. And on 3 months to the day, I hit 501 subscribers. I am so thankful for all the support you folks have shown, and especially for, let me turn this down just a hair, especially for all the music that people have shared back saying, hey, I've been inspired by your videos, here's something that I wrote. That just makes me feel incredibly good. Before I go too deep into that, let's move on with the episode. We have a special one. This is going to be a big episode. We're going to work on the Klee sequencer, which it's spelled Klee, but it's pronounced Clay, which makes really bizarre stuff, kind of like this. Okay, that's pretty weird. But let's talk a little bit about what's going on here. We are about to stray away from the classic East Coast style of synthesis. And we're going to do some West Coast style of synthesis. So what am I talking about, East Coast, West Coast? Well, let's dive into that a little bit. On the East Coast, the manufacturers that were generally associated with East Coast synthesis were like Moog and ARP. The architecture of these modular synthesizers were that they had keyboards. They were trying to make new sounds, but using these new sounds on a keyboard to play music that sounds like jazz or classical or rock, but they basically wanted new sounds on a keyboard, and they tended to be subtractive synthesis. Let's look at a few classic examples of East Coast synthesis. The man himself, Keith Emerson. Another classic example of East Coast synthesis is Isao Tomita. Oh, I love this guy. I actually have this album on pink vinyl, actually coral colored vinyl. As you can see, he's playing keyboard, but he's playing new sounds, but in almost a classical style. Of course, the classic album, which just brought the modular synthesis to the populace, was Switched on Bach by Wendy Carlos. Oddly enough, it is incredibly difficult to find an example on YouTube or Amazon or anywhere of Switched on Bach to share with you. This Wikipedia page is the only sample I could find of this music. So let's give an example of what that sounded like. So if that's East Coast music, what is West Coast? Well, West Coast music is mostly associated with the manufacturer Buchla and Don Buchla, who is building these synthesizers. His concept was that he wasn't going to have a keyboard. He was going to create new sounds but also new melodies using not so much randomness, but more uncertainty. Uncertainty. Now, as we get into the Klee, we're going to see the difference here between randomness and uncertainty. He wanted to make sounds that no one had ever heard before. And the classic example of West Coast synthesis is Morton Subotnick's album, Silver Apples of the Moon. Now, there's stuff here that would sound appropriate in acid modular music today. I mean, listen to this. This is pretty amazing. Now, Tony Rolando of Make Noise Music did an excellent talk on East Coast versus West Coast music. The differences, who the musicians were, and why his new modular synthesizer is called the O-Coast or No Coast. Well, hello and welcome to the real world, to the inside of the house where we're currently sitting in front of the pellet stove because it is a cold, cold morning here in the Sierra Mountains of California. Outside, it looks like this. Anyway, I want to share with you a little bit of just showing how long I've been interested in this stuff. These are all vinyl records that I bought at the time of publication when they first came out. Yes, I have switched on Bach, Walter Carlos. Look at that Moog system in the background. Yep, the biggest selling classical album at the time, perhaps still, and it's Bach produced on modular synthesizer. Now, while everyone bought that one, not everyone has the Well-Tempered synthesizer or the Clockwork Orange soundtrack. Both amazing pieces and all on the original vinyl. And of course, if you're into modular synthesis in the 70s, you have to be into Emerson, Lake and Palmer. But I was into Emerson, Lake and Palmer with the Nice. Yep, the double gatefold album, Keith Emerson with the Nice. And of course, all the original ELP albums, including the classic Brain Cell Surgery with the fold out and the poster still intact. But I didn't stop there. I also picked up anything Keith Emerson did. Here is the soundtrack to a not very good movie with Sylvester Stallone called Nighthawks. Some of the music's pretty good. I even have some of the guys that were copying ELP. There's this German band called Triumvirate. Yes, the new Triumvirate, which did not have 3 people. They had 4. But there are absolute... Jürgen Fritz, I believe. Yeah, he was the keyboard player. Barry Palmer, vocals, not drums. There are straight quotes in little bits of songs straight off of ELP albums on this album. It's amazing. They were basically an ELP cover band that wrote their own stuff. But then we move on to even further cool synthesizer and tape music stuff, such as Brian Eno's Discrete Music, where it actually goes into show in the liner notes here the path through various tape recorders to make tape music. And then of course from there we get into somewhat the more popular stuff like Jean-Michel Jarre, Equinox. This was an amazing album. Very spooky guy, but brilliant album. Anyway, that just goes to show a little bit of how long I've been interested in this stuff. I just wanted to share that with you on our 500 subscriber special. Okay, so West Coast synthesis is about uncertainty and finding new notes, new melodies, new sounds, tending to be generative music, tending not to use a keyboard. But as Tony said in his talk, the interesting thing is that there really is no competition anymore or really never was, of East Coast versus West Coast. Almost all modular synthesizers today are a blend of East Coast and West Coast synthesis. This Klee synthesizer, by the way, I keep saying Klee, it's actually pronounced Clay, is a really good introduction to the ideas behind West Coast synthesis. By the way, there is a manual for this. However, it's over 50 pages long. So I'm going to try to save you from that. Okay, so what is the Klee sequencer? Well, there are two 8-step sequencers. There's the A section here in the top, and there's the B section here in the bottom. One of the first things that is different about this sequencer is this range knob. That this range knob determines the range of all of these pitch knobs. So right now, let's turn it back on. I have set it to be about a fifth. I could step through here, or I could use a trigger or a gate. Now, what this means, because I have my outputs going to a quantizer, I could kind of easily set up weird little melodies. Maybe a little less. There we go. Okay, so there's a little sequence. All right, I've zoomed in a little bit so we can see this better. We do have a second sequencer, the B section, which is marked here in green and is the bottom half of this. And at this point, it doesn't really sound like it's that different than, say, the Seek 3 in the fundamental modules, in that we have an 8-step sequencer which we can put something in, and we have a second one, and we can run either the 8-step sequencer over and over and over and the B side over and over in sync with an A and a B output, or we could connect them up into the A side plus the B side and get a 16-step output. That's not sounding all that bizarre at this point. Here's what makes this different. Basically what a sequencer is a shift register. That we have these 8 outputs, right? Because these are all just voltages. These are just voltages I'm going to send through my quantizer into the voltage per octave in of my oscillator. And as we step, the active channel is going to move one step further, one step further, one step further, until we get to the end of the 8-step sequence, and then it starts over again. So really what a sequencer is a shift register that can move however many steps you want to set it to step and will recycle. Not that bizarre. However, what if I do something like this? Well, I clicked 5, notice that the light on 5, nothing's happened. I have to click load to load this new program in, and now I have 5, 1 and 5, and if I step, they both move. And when 5 hits the N here, it comes back to the beginning, and they both move. So what does that mean? Does that mean I'm having 2 notes? No. What it means is that I'm adding whatever voltage this is plus whatever voltage that is and outputting it to A. So let's come back and start our clock again. I'm going to add in 5, and nothing happens until I load the program. I have a completely different sequence. Let's take 5 output 4 in. about 8? Let's just play with them. So we're creating brand new melodies that we don't really know what they are, hence the uncertainty. However, if I come back to the original program and load it, I can come back to my original sequence. Now over here, I have, you'll notice this 1 through 8, but also 9 through 16. So if I turn that on, load it, I will be running the second side. And now let's turn on the B side. Oh, you know what? We don't have a melody design, so let's design a melody. There we go. Now we could run both of them. And if we play with this side and load it, we've added, how strange, we've added voltages together on the B side. Well, one of the things that's kind of useful while we're experimenting is not to have to press this load button all the time. So let's take, say, every 16 beats, and we're just going to load whatever we've played with. That's interesting. However, I'm going to play A plus B, and I'm going to say go to the 16. There we go. And let's step this. There we go. You can see that we're going through the entire cycle because we have 16 steps here, but we did have to tell it give both the A and the B channel. However, this isn't really play the A side and then play the B side. This is play the A channel and add the voltages of the B channel. So notice how these multiple patterns are cycling all the way around the circle. Now if I switch back to 2 times 8, we have an 8-step cycle, but we are literally adding, let's do this. So we're adding that note plus that note plus that note plus that note because we have the A plus B. If I went over here, I would have only this note plus this note because I'm only looking at the A, whereas this output is only looking at the B. This is really a strange way of thinking of sequencing. And of course, if we play with the octaves, we can create some really strange sounds. And what if we play with the range now? Well, what that's going to do is change the range of every single knob at the same time. But wait, we talked about how this is uncertainty but not randomness. Well, it turns out we can add randomness. Over here what I have is a sample and hold. And you'll remember a sample and hold is basically has a noise source, and every time you trigger it, it reads from this noise source and gives us a random note across the entire audio range, and that's what the output is. I'm going to take that, put it here to the random threshold. Now what's happening is this is feeding at every beat. See, at every beat, it's feeding a random note. Any random note that is above this threshold. Oh, wait, here we go. Let me crank it up and put it on random. There we go. We'll add a bit at the beginning. Let's try this. Okay, let's find the initial. There we go. So there's our initial pattern. So it's kind of like the big knob on the Turing machine, right? That how much randomness are we going to bring in? Are we going to bring in a little bit of randomness? Or are we going to bring in a lot of randomness? And the randomness is basically switching these guys for us. Because notice, I only have one switch up, but I've got quite a few red dots. Now if I come up here, I should have a little bit less randomness. If I come this way, I should have a lot of randomness. Go back to the pattern and let it reset. And we're back. But believe me, that's not all the Klee can do. Let's look at these gate outputs, because this is where things get really cool. So what I've done here is I've gone back to our single note pattern. I'm using, right now I'm just going to use the A side. And I've taken the A side trigger bus and routed it to this ADSR to this VCA. So now we're getting a pulse with every note. Very similar to what a normal sequencer would do. But check this out. Actually, let me turn all these off. So right now, only this first beat is going to send a gate. Let's say I turn 4 on. And notice that up is bus 1, down is bus 3, middle is bus 2, which is not what you exactly think it would be. Let's not worry about that right now. And you can see 1, 4, 1, 4. That we have pulses on 1 and 4 that will drive the ADSR. But what happens when we switch this? Think about this for a moment. We now have 2 of these sequences turned on. 2 of these bits in the shift register turned on, which means when either one of them passes either 1 or 4, we will get a pulse. That is a really different concept. See, so now we're getting this interesting polyrhythm between this pattern and this pattern. But now I have my B pattern over here, which I'm not even listening to at this point. I have the volume turned down. And yet, on this side, I could also add a gate. See, this is when the green hits that third one, I have a gate on bus 1. Let's add that to my buses here. So if either of the red bits passes either 1 or 5, it'll send a gate to bus 1. And if the green bit goes to gate 3, it'll also send one to gate 1. Now, what if I want to have my B side? Well, I'll turn this volume up. And right now, I only have the first beat going to my B side. What if I say add the 6th one? And of course, if I add another note into my green sequence, and maybe what I should do there we go, is add some modulation to that filter using the same ADSR. And because I could switch these switches either direction, up or down, I could have the red side sending gates to bus 3 and the green side sending to bus 1, or either combination. What if I now switch this to 1 times 16? I've created a 16-bit pattern. All right, there is even more, because here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn these off. Okay, so now I have 1 bit shifting around, and I have only the 1, 5, and 7 triggering. I'm going to put 4 on. Okay, because we have this merge switch. What does the merge do? Well, because we have 2 gates that are simultaneous, or not simultaneous, but sequential, it's going to leave the gate on and merge it with this one. And we can make a very long gate. Now, that may seem like a very subtle thing, but once again, what happens when we add multiple bits into the pattern? It means either of the bits that passes 4 or 5 is going to keep that gate on. do the same thing with the B section. Oh wait, we don't have any notes, do we? Okay, so what is bus 2? Bus 2 is an interesting bus. When we say we're going to have bus 2 here, it can be either an and or a nor, meaning it will send out a signal, if I'm in the and mode, when both of these are on. Or I can go to no, nor, and it will only send a signal when neither of these are on. You can see they're almost always on, so let's make this a little bit less complex. See right there's a gap. Bum, 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 where neither gate is on. Bum. So let's do this. Let's put a kick drum in so we can hear when that's happening. Now if we did and, we'd get kick drums a lot. Notice that selecting the notes also changes the rhythm because it's changing the sequence of the bit pattern. There is still more to do with this Klee sequencer. And I'm going to point you towards that 50+ page manual because your assignment is to figure out what does the B invert do. Now you might think, oh, well it inverts these for the B pattern, and it sort of does. But what we can do using the B invert is we can actually create not just 16-bit patterns, but 32-bit patterns. I better recycle it or reload it only every 32. Okay, this is just weird and fun and amazing. How about this? I want you to try running these to something like braids with the drum sound, or to the resonator and make some gong sounds or bell sounds and have this very strange sort of bell choir going. There's so much you can do with this, and we don't really know what we're going to get from any point to the next. That is your introduction to West Coast synthesis. Hey folks, thanks once again for the 500+ subscribers. I really do appreciate this. And of course, if you do enjoy this series, please like and subscribe if you're not already. Thank you again. This is episode 16 of Modular Curiosity, and as always, Stay curious.